I was watching V. Westlife's video of his Thinkpad X60, amazing after 10 years, still amazing after 10 years, and I was reminded that I wanted to actually make a review video of this T430 after having it for, I don't really remember. I've had this computer since June 3rd of 2016, so it's been about half of a year, give or take a couple days, since I got this, and I figured that now is as good a time as any to actually make the review. The first thing that I'm going to point out is that it actually at least retains the build of the standard 16:9 ThinkPad. You can see it looks like just an ordinary ThinkPad, and I can close the lid and it would still look like a ThinkPad. And you can see that my monitor also changed to reflect the fact that, it thinks that I only want to use the one monitor, even though that's not quite true. So now when I open this again, it's going to have everything on this monitor. I'm going to have to fix that. The other thing I like about this computer is the display. It's not a 4:3 aspect ratio display, which I would prefer. And I've got one sitting over there if I really want it. That's actually old school technology right there. I bet you all of the people on YouTube are going to say, "Oh, why did you throw that stupid thing in the garbage?" Well, funny enough, it came from the garbage, and look at this. It works perfectly fine. But anyways, that's not the point of the video. I've got a 4:3 aspect ratio display, and I love the real estate that you get with a 4:3 aspect ratio display when you compare it to 16:9. You get more pixels. That's the point. That's why people prefer, or at least one of the reasons why people prefer 4:3 over 16:9 or 16:10. But this display does have a redeeming feature in that it's got an LED backlight, which is completely smooth and won't turn pink over the years, like a lot of my CCFL backlights will. And the viewing angles, although not great, are not actually that bad either. Any place I could possibly sit here where I'm looking at this computer, I've got a pretty good viewing angle. Port-wise, this is the first computer that I have ever owned that has got USB 3.0 ports. There's 2 of them right there. And I gotta say, USB 3.0 is a big speed improvement. Unfortunately, they got rid of the eSATA port, which is something that I used on my previous ThinkPad. I can do without it mostly. The hardware that I had hooked up via eSATA is now hooked up via USB 3.0, but it would have been nice to at least have the option to use the eSATA port, but it's not there, so you can't use it. You could, if you really wanted to. The system does have an express card slot over here. It's also got an SD card slot, which I find very, very useful, and a pair of USB 2.0 ports. There's one there, and there's one on the other side of the system. And it also has an Ethernet on the back. At least I thought it had an Ethernet on the back. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh yeah, no, it does have Ethernet on the back. The Ethernet's right there. Another glaring omission that I would have loved to see on this thing is FireWire. Obviously, I'm using a mini DV camera right now, and it would be really good for this. However, if I can't have it, I guess I can't have it. So I guess there's that. Something else that seriously irritates me, but is a feature on all laptops these days, is the combo jack for the audio. I do not know why. There's plenty of space to do it here. There's look at all this space right here, right beside the cooling vent. It really wouldn't have killed them to separate the microphone and the headphone jacks. So now, I can't actually use a microphone and headphone at the same time. I gotta unplug this, unplug my speakers that I've got hooked up to use the microphone. In fact, I haven't really been able to get that to work either, so I guess there's that. Fortunately, it's still got VGA. That's a nice thing to have. And in terms of other ports, I think that's actually really it. It does have the Ultra Bay on the side, which fits, although it's not quite the same size. You might be able to see a little bit, and even more so if I turn the video light on. You'll see that there's a gap in between the top of the machine and the Ultra Bay. I don't really care about that, as long as I can still use it. That's perfectly fine to me. And it's just a SATA Ultra Bay, so whatever. Another thing that this T430 has that I have not used before is the web camera. It's not high fidelity, it's not autofocus or anything like that, but it is certainly a lot better than some of the other cheapies that you can buy at stores. And unfortunately, thus basically ends, for the most part, the good news portion of our broadcast. There are a lot of things about this system that I like. I've already mentioned them. The webcam I like the USB 3.0, I like the fact that it's got VGA. But here's what I don't like about it. I don't like the combo jack, I've already mentioned that. And one of the big things that I don't like at all is this new style keyboard. This is a Lenovo Thinkpad T410, and as you can see, it's got the regular tactile keyboard that came with ThinkPads for years and years and years. It's a little bit cheapened out, and you can tell that obviously it's not the same layout. But for the most part, it's pretty much the same design. Lenovo took that and threw it all away in favor of this on the newer machines. And I've got to say, a lot of people say great things about these chiclet keyboards that are on these ThinkPads. They say, oh, it's so much better than a MacBook keyboard, and oh, it's so much better than an Acer that you could buy at Best Buy. And sure, it's a little wee tiny bit better. It's still garbage. I find myself constantly slamming on these keys because it does not have the same tactile feedback. In fact, it's got very little tactile feedback. There is some there, but it just flat out does not exist like it should. And to top it off, the keyboard feels cheap. It doesn't have the same textured finish that the ThinkPad keyboards of times past had. This one is very worn out, as you could probably tell when I turn the camera light on, but it has got the textured finish that I like to see on laptops. And when you consider that the rest of this particular computer has got a textured feel on the palm rest, on the back of the unit, it's got the rubberized finish, thankfully. The rest of this computer that you're touching has got a textured feel. Would it really have killed them to add the textured feel to the keyboard? Of course, this same keyboard design was used in the T430 and later systems. Probably by the time you're watching this, there will be later systems, but I'm not aware of any right now. Maybe the T450. And they changed the design on that thing completely. They got rid of all the textured feel, so it's now completely different. So in those systems, this keyboard matches. In this one, it just feels like it was an afterthought. It feels like it was a hodgy-podgy, kludgy add-on after the fact. And that, my friends, really makes the product feel like a cheap kid's toy. And to top this off, you can see I uploaded a keyboard replacement video. That was in October. That was 4 months after I picked this system up. And the keyboard broke. The iKey stopped functioning. Well, actually, the iKey worked, but the keycap broke. Turns out that the little scissor switch inside wasn't so resilient to all of those key presses, because the I is a very common key. And the O key did exactly the same thing. And at that point I decided, you know what, I'm just going to buy a new keyboard. And so I did. This is the new keyboard. About a day after I replaced that keyboard, I had to replace the H key on the keyboard, because that broke as well. Fortunately, I kept the other keyboard around and was able to transplant keycaps. I still have the other keyboard to transplant keycaps with. But that's completely inexcusable on a business laptop that costs a couple of $1,000s to have to replace the keyboard after 4 months. I have no idea when this became acceptable, but I think that is completely, and I'm going to use a non-politically correct term here because it's the best way that I can think of to describe this, for want of a better way, I think it's completely retarded on the part of Lenovo to design a keyboard that is built so cheaply that it falls apart after 4 months of use. This keyboard over here, this ThinkPad, has been in my possession since 2014. That is what? Almost 3 years of heavy use. This used to be my main computer. In fact, like I said, the 430 replaced this. And although the keycaps don't look pretty, you can probably tell there's a lot of missing printing here. All of them are still intact. All of them are still functional. So for that one to last almost 3 years, and this to not even be able to last 1 year, is, well, kind of ridiculous. In fact, I can even go a step further. There's a T500 that's sitting over there that's using the same keyboard that I had with it when I bought it new, in 2012. Although I didn't buy it new, I bought it used as well. But 2012, It's been almost 5 years. That keyboard's lasted almost 5 years, and this one couldn't even last 5 months. That's pretty pathetic. To add on to this, I made this video probably, it was before the New Year's, so I'm guessing it's been maybe about a week or so. And in that week, I have replaced 4 more keycaps. I think that it's gone from being pathetic to completely unacceptable. In fact, it is so bad that I went out and I bought myself an external keyboard. Bought myself a good, decent, nice keyboard as opposed to the piece of junk that is in this laptop. The speakers that are present on this laptop are also not very high fidelity. I'm going to unplug my external speakers, which you heard pop there. Got some IBMs up there. Really nice speakers, but that's not really the point. And we're going to go ahead and play. Well, we'll turn the sound down first, so I don't serenade everybody right out of the room. Right out of the house, anyways. They're trying to sleep. We'll go ahead and we'll play something. That's what the speakers sound like. On their own, not too bad. Let me plug in the external speakers, though. I think you'll agree, that's a fair bit better. Whoops. Well, I unplugged it, but anyways. So I didn't insert it fully, but there you go. Let me turn that down. I think you can tell that the external speakers sound a lot better. So these are kind of crappy speakers, if you ask me. Really wouldn't have killed them to put a little bit bigger speakers in there that were capable of a little bit more volume, if not a little bit more fidelity as well. And to be perfectly clear, I am well aware of the fact that this is a business laptop and therefore playing sounds is not its primary purpose. However, for a business laptop, even these speakers are kind of crappy. I think the speakers in my T61 and my T500 would wipe the floor with this. I find trackpads and laptops to generally be a massive nuisance. Lenovo at least has kept the same one for a while. This is what it looks like on the previous generation Thinkpad. Buttons are the same. Everything's basically the same. So at least that much is true. I believe that these track point buttons have also remained mostly the same. Now they're a little different. Not too awful terrible much. The design of the laptop's changed a little bit, but not too awful much. Not so much that you'd think that it was a completely different laptop. Not like going from the 430 to the 440. Not anything like that. But I really don't like this trackpad. There are so many problems that it has. They try to make it feel tactile, which is okay, except that it rubs your finger raw. It's really annoying. If you're using your computer like I am, it rubs your finger raw. And that is the reason, although I can't really access it right now, that I've got an external mouse hooked up to the system. I don't like the trackpad. And I could use the track point. I'm perfectly okay with using the track point, but personally I'd rather just use an external mouse anyways. Because even the track point just doesn't feel right. These buttons feel kind of cheap. Again, they're mostly unchanged, and that's what really counts to me, but the simple fact of the matter is that they have changed, and they just don't feel right. And speaking of things that don't feel right, this is the big knock that I think I'm going to give this thing. You could say what you want about the keyboard. You could say what you want about the trackpad. You could say what you want about the combo jack. But what really matters most to me in a laptop, especially one that is intended to be business grade, is the build quality. And compared to previous ThinkPads, the build quality on this particular ThinkPad is subpar. I feel that the quality of the keyboard is subpar. The quality of the plastic molding, it just doesn't really feel like I'm using a high-quality business laptop. And the flex, look at all the flex that this thing has got. This one does not have nearly as much flex. Maybe you won't see that unless I turn the light on. which is in gain up mode right now for a little bit additional, the whole laptop doesn't flex. On this, the whole laptop flexes. Even here, on this side, the whole laptop flexes. Now you tell me, but is that not just totally subpar quality? The screen bezel doesn't even feel like it's the same, quality plastic as the screen bezel on this particular ThinkPad. And furthermore, it's been thinned a little bit. The screen is actually thinner than it was on previous ThinkPads. And if you don't believe me, here's the video light. You can take a look at that as compared to this. It's just not the same. At least, the rubberized finish feels mostly the same. The hinges are certainly better. That's another thing that I will give them credit for. The hinges are larger, and therefore they should last longer. But overall, the build quality just is not where it should be. In fact, I want to point something out here. This little piece here, this is broken. I don't even know what happened to it. But I can't get that out of there. Whereas on this one, it still works perfectly fine. No problems. This last thing is not so much a complaint about the laptop itself, but rather the configuration I ordered it in. This particular computer's got the lowest end Core i5 CPU that is available, the 3320M. It's an Ivy Bridge CPU, 2.6 gigahertz, at least I think it's the lowest end that's available for these. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM, it's running 64-bit Windows 7, but it's got the Intel HD graphics. And the Intel HD graphics are nowhere near good enough to do HD 1080p 60 FPS video rendering. It's faster than the old system, but it really just is not fast enough for me. I don't know how much adding NVIDIA dedicated graphics or AMD dedicated graphics would improve the process, but I don't really know. I don't really think it would be much. This thing doesn't really perform as fast as I really think that it should at editing and rendering HD 1080p 60 FPS, which is one of the reasons why I just don't do it very much anymore, and I prefer to use these cameras. Alright, let's wrap this up. So what do I think about this laptop? Well, I appreciate the generous inclusion of 4 USB ports, 2 of which are USB 3.0. I appreciate the presence of a VGA port for your legacy peripherals. I appreciate the Ethernet, and I appreciate the fact that the Ultra Bay remains compatible. I do not appreciate the build quality, and that is where I'm going to knock this thing major points. The build quality is not where it should be for a professional, multi-$1,000 business laptop, used or not. I would feel bad after paying a couple thousand for this, given just how subpar it feels. The keyboard is less than useless. It died after 4 months. I replaced it, and it broke after a couple days again. Is this really the kind of quality that we want in our business-grade computers? I don't think so, but I must be pretty wrong, because apparently that's what it is nowadays. And a lot of people love to say, oh, these keyboards are great. They're really not. I think that they're trash. I mean, sure, it's not as crappy as the chiclet Macbook keyboards. But let's make no mistake, folks, it's a chiclet keyboard. It's got no tactile feedback. It feels cheap. It's got no textured finish, which contributes to the cheap feeling. It's just not the kind of keyboard that I would expect to see in a multi-$1,000 business laptop. So my final verdict, it doesn't get my seal of approval, but it's certainly usable anyways. I give it a meh. Probably would never buy one for somebody else. Probably would never buy another one for myself. And I'm thinking that my next laptop is probably going to be a Dell or something else, because I don't like the way that Lenovo headed with their ThinkPads. But it's certainly usable, and I hope that I'll get 5 years out of it, if not more than that. If you've got any questions, I'd certainly love to answer them. If you've got any comments, I'd love to hear them. Leave them down below. And until next time, this is CP666 signing off. Till then, guys,